Welcome, mystic seekers, to Mystic Manor, where history meets mystery. A Christmas Carol isn't just a story. It's one of the most popular tales of Christmas. At its heart is Ebenezer Scrooge, a figure so iconic that his name became synonymous with greed, who may have been inspired by actual people whose lives were consumed by wealth. It's in this world that one of the most beloved and well-known holiday tales was born. Victorian England may seem like a land of carolers and snow-covered streets, but beneath the festive glow was a world of hardship and struggle. A Christmas Carol was born from this darker side of history. So, what if A Christmas Carol wasn't just a product of Charles Dickens' imagination? The notorious Ebenezer Scrooge was inspired by real-life people who were so consumed by their wealth that they lived in squalor, and those ghostly visitors who confront him on Christmas Eve. They may be rooted in the Victorian fascination with the supernatural, a time when seances were held in darkened rooms and the dead were believed to walk among us. Tonight, we're peeling back the layers of A Christmas Carol and the real history and mysticism behind the characters, uncovering the real-life inspirations behind Scrooge and his ghostly visitors. Who were these men? And why did Dickens summon spirits to tell his tale? Let's uncover the truth behind A Christmas Carol. When we think of Christmas, certain images come to mind. Twinkling lights, festive gatherings, and the spirit of giving. But Dickens's A Christmas Carol, written in 1843, gives us another unforgettable figure, Ebenezer Scrooge, the very embodiment of cold-hearted greed. Scrooge is introduced to us as a wealthy yet miserly old man who despises Christmas and resents generosity. Dickens describes him vividly, writing that Scrooge was a squeezing, wrenching, grasping, scraping, clutching, covetous old sinner, a man who finds joy only in the accumulation of wealth, with no concern for those around him. Scrooge's disdain for humanity and relentless pursuit of money make him a symbol of the darker side of society. When we meet him, he is a figure who has cut himself off from family, friends, and any sense of joy. He sneers at the warmth of Christmas, declaring it a humbug. Scrooge's signature line, "Bah, humbug," has since become the universal cry of cynics and skeptics everywhere. But beneath Scrooge's icy exterior lies a man shaped by a lifetime of choices and experiences. Choices that mirror the obsessions of real-life figures. One man who is thought to be inspired by Ebenezer Scrooge is John Elwes. He was a member of Parliament in Great Britain for Berkshire and a landowner who became famous for his extreme frugality. He inherited his first fortune at the age of 4 when his father passed away. His mother, Amy, was left £100,000. However, she reportedly starved herself to death due to her extreme frugality, leading Elwes to inherit the family estate, including Marcham Park in Berkshire. Later, in 1763, at the age of 49, Elwes inherited a second, more substantial fortune from his uncle. Despite his wealth, Elwes was known to live in near squalor. He avoided lighting fires to save on coal, even in cold weather, and would wear ragged clothes to avoid the expense of new ones. His habits extended to refusing repairs on his properties, even when they were falling apart. Elwes reportedly ate stale, moldy food rather than purchase fresh provisions. It's said he even ate a partridge that had already been chewed on by rats. He would refuse to pay for carriage repairs, opting to endure discomfort rather than spend on maintenance. Stories suggest he would walk long distances in tattered shoes to avoid paying for transportation. Though Elwes lived before Dickens's time, stories about his extreme behavior were widely known in England and likely served as inspiration for Dickens's character of Scrooge. Another well-known inspiration for Scrooge was James "Jemmy" Wood, known as the Gloucester Miser. He was a banker from Gloucester, England, who became infamous for his miserly ways. Wood was also extremely wealthy, but led a life marked by intense thriftiness and eccentricity. Wood owned the Gloucester Old Bank, making him one of the wealthiest men in England. However, he hoarded his money, reluctant to spend or lend even modest sums. He reportedly lived in run-down conditions, refused to spend on proper housing or clothing, and was notoriously suspicious, often fearing his money would be stolen. Like Elwes, Wood's reputation as a miser grew into legend. His tight-fistedness was so severe that rumors of his ghost haunting his bank after his death became part of local law. Both Elwes and Wood represented the era's critique of the ultra-wealthy who refused to support public welfare or improve the conditions around them. Dickens, well aware of such individuals and their public image, likely drew upon the tales of these notorious misers as he crafted Scrooge's character. During Charles Dickens's lifetime, Victorian England was gripped by a fascination with the supernatural. The Industrial Revolution had brought massive societal changes, and with them came both curiosity and anxiety about death, the afterlife, and the possibility of communicating with the departed. By the mid-19th century, spiritualism, a belief system centered around communicating with spirits of the dead, had gained a strong following. People attended seances, spirit photography became popular, and mediums claimed they could contact the deceased. The wealthy and poor alike sought answers in spiritualism, hoping to connect with loved ones and gain insight into life after death. This obsession with the supernatural is reflected in Dickens's A Christmas Carol. These ghostly visitors aren't just literary devices. They embody Victorian beliefs, fears, and hopes surrounding life, memory, and the afterlife. Jacob Marley, Scrooge's former business partner, is the first to visit. Marley's ghost appears bound in heavy chains, which he tells Scrooge he forged in life, symbolizing the weight of his greed and selfishness. The chains are adorned with padlocks, ledgers, and cash boxes, objects representing Marley's obsessive pursuit of wealth. His tormented state is a powerful warning of what awaits Scrooge if he doesn't change. Marley's depiction reflects popular Victorian portrayals of restless spirits burdened by their past actions in life. Ghosts in Victorian art and literature were often shown as souls suffering due to their earthly deeds, carrying with them reminders of their sins. Chains were common symbols of a life burdened by guilt or regret, and Marley's ghost served as a perfect embodiment of these ideas, aligning with Dickens's moral message about the consequences of living a life consumed by greed and disregard for others. Marley embodies the miserly, self-serving business figure that was a common stereotype in Victorian England. Dickens, critical of the wealthy elite who ignored the plight of the poor, likely used Marley's character to symbolize the consequences of such a life. Dickens grew up surrounded by hardship, partly due to his father's financial struggles, which ultimately landed him in debtor's prison. This experience made Dickens acutely aware of the dangers of financial irresponsibility, the obsession with money, and its impact on relationships. The Ghost of Christmas Past is a fascinating blend of innocence and wisdom, with an appearance that Dickens describes as both childlike and aged. This ghost has a glowing light emanating from its head, representing enlightenment, memory, and the clarity of the past. The Victorians believed in the cyclical nature of time, where past events continue to influence the present and future. The ghost's ability to transport Scrooge to his own memories represents both the joys and sorrows of his past, allowing him to see where he went astray. In the Victorian era, there was a growing recognition of the power of memory, not only as a personal experience, but as a collective and societal force. The Ghost of Christmas Present. This ghost closely resembles the figure of Father Christmas, a folkloric figure who embodies the spirit of feasting, generosity, and goodwill. In the Victorian era, Christmas was undergoing a revival, with traditions emphasizing the importance of giving and sharing. The ghost's lavish appearance and cheerful demeanor remind Scrooge of the joys of charity and compassion, presenting the present moment as an opportunity for change. Dickens used this character to highlight Victorian ideals of generosity and the importance of community. The Ghost of Christmas, yet to come, also known as the Ghost of Christmas Future, is the most ominous of the spirits. Shrouded in a dark, hooded cloak, he is silent and foreboding, never revealing his face. Dickens uses this ghost's eerie silence and shadowy form to symbolize the uncertainty and inevitability of death. A Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come is heavily inspired by the Grim Reaper, one of the most recognizable symbols of death. When Dickens created this final ghost, he drew on imagery that would have struck deep with Victorian audiences. Like the Grim Reaper leading souls to the afterlife, this ghost guides Scrooge to his own grave, a grim vision of what lies ahead if he doesn't change. In Victorian times, death was a constant presence, and the image of the Grim Reaper would have been familiar and terrifying to Dickens's readers. The ghost's resemblance to the Grim Reaper forces Scrooge to confront his mortality and consider what kind of legacy he wants to leave behind. Some literary scholars believe that Tiny Tim was partly inspired by Dickens's nephew, Henry Burnett Jr., who was disabled and had a delicate health condition. Dickens was reportedly close to Henry, and the boy's physical challenges and innocence may have influenced Dickens's creation of Tiny Tim. Dickens was deeply affected by the poverty he saw around him, particularly the struggles of children. Victorian London had thousands of impoverished children who suffered from malnutrition, disease, and lack of healthcare, much like Tiny Tim. Dickens visited hospitals and often used his writing to highlight social injustices, particularly the hardships facing poor children, whom he felt were innocent of society's failures. Dickens experienced poverty firsthand. When his father was imprisoned for debt, young Dickens had to leave school and work in a boot-blacking factory under harsh conditions. This experience instilled in him empathy for children growing up in poverty and may have contributed to Tiny Tim's character as a symbol of innocence and resilience. Diseases like tuberculosis and rickets were prevalent, especially among the poor. Tiny Tim's condition would have been recognizable to Victorian readers as representative of the many children affected by such conditions. Tiny Tim's character was Dickens's way of giving a voice to the children and families suffering in Victorian England, hoping to encourage readers to consider their own role in shaping a more compassionate world. Bob Cratchit represents the struggles of many working families in Victorian England. Scrooge is Bob Cratchit's miserly employer, the type of Victorian boss who prioritized profits over people. As a low-paid clerk in Scrooge's counting house, Cratchit endures long hours and harsh conditions, symbolizing the struggles of many working families at the time. Despite his meager wages, Bob maintains a kind heart and a strong family bond, creating a sharp contrast to Scrooge's cold, profit-driven mentality. Dickens drew this character from his own experiences and observations of working-class life in London, where many families faced tough conditions with a little pay. Bob Cratchit serves as a contrast to Scrooge's greed, showing that kindness and love can flourish even in poverty. Bob's character adds depth to the story, reminding readers that generosity and compassion can make a meaningful difference in people's lives, especially during the holiday season. If Ebenezer Scrooge is a symbol of greed, Fezziwig is his polar opposite, the ultimate symbol of generosity and joy. Fezziwig throws extravagant parties, treats his employees like family, and shows what it means to truly live with kindness. Some say Fezziwig is Dickens's way of reminding us that wealth doesn't have to make you cold. It can be used to warm the hearts of others. Fezziwig may seem like the perfect boss, a man who valued joy and kindness over profits, but his character wasn't just a cheerful addition to Dickens's story. He represents a stark contrast to the harsh realities of Victorian employers, many of whom exploited their workers with little regard for their well-being. Fezziwig's generosity may have been Dickens's way of showing what could exist in a better world. An employer who used wealth to uplift rather than oppress. Some speculate that Fezziwig may have been inspired by Dickens's own longing for kindness during his tough childhood. But the real magic of Fezziwig lies in the family he created. A family for those who might not have had one to celebrate with on Christmas. In a time when workers were often treated as disposable, Fezziwig's character offers a glimpse of what the holiday spirit could be. A Christmas Carol was born from Dickens's observations of the grim realities of Victorian England, a time when the gap between the rich and the poor was vast, and those struggling with poverty faced harsh conditions, from workhouses to debtors' prisons. Children labored in factories, families endured overcrowded slums, and a lack of social welfare left many in desperate need. Dickens himself experienced these harsh realities, which fueled his desire to reveal the suffering hidden beneath London's glittering wealth. By setting Scrooge's transformation against this bleak backdrop, Dickens crafted a story that confronted his readers with the uncomfortable truths of their society, making his plea for compassion all the more powerful. Through A Christmas Carol, Dickens encouraged readers to look beyond themselves and recognize their shared humanity. The story was written at a time when poverty was often viewed as a moral failing, with many in the upper classes believing that the poor deserved their suffering due to laziness or lack of discipline. Dickens directly challenged this perspective, suggesting that poverty was a societal failure, not an individual one, and that the wealthy had a moral responsibility to help those in need. The story also revived and reshaped Christmas traditions in Victorian England, promoting ideas of charity, family gatherings, and celebrating the season's warmth and generosity. By placing Scrooge's redemption at Christmas, Dickens associated the holiday with compassion, urging his readers to carry its lessons into their own lives. A Christmas Carol was more than a bestseller. It was a cultural phenomenon that contributed to the revitalization of Christmas. Through his memorable characters and ghostly narrative, Dickens made a lasting appeal for empathy, reminding people that wealth and status are fleeting, but kindness and community create a legacy worth leaving. Thank you for joining me for this transformative story. Until next time, stay mystical. And may you always find light in the darkest of times. If you made it this far and liked the video, don't forget to hit the like button and let me know in the comments that this topic was interesting, so I know to keep making content like this one. Also, I'd love to know which ghost from A Christmas Carol do you think would have the greatest impact on you? And don't forget to subscribe to join the Mystic Seekers to explore more dark history topics like this one. Thank you for watching.